started because it's after 6. If that's all right with everyone. So Mark and Ian, I assume, are not coming or coming late.
Ian is not coming.
Oh, that's right. Ian is not coming. And are we missing anyone else?
Mark's coming first, I know.
Mark is coming?
It's a long way to Berlin from Brattleboro.
Okay, so tonight, we want to, in addition to what's on the list, well, as part of the list, but that's not fully clear, so we want to talk about the petitions that have been coming, the articles, the warnings for those, the video we've been working on, and potentially a review of the finances, but I don't know, in the review process, part of the agenda, but I don't know if we're going to have time for that. Let's go ahead and approve the minutes, and then I'll talk about the process for a sec, and then it'll be open to public comment, and then we'll do the work session, and then if there's time, as usual, we will have public comment at the end.
So moved as written.
Second.
Any discussion? Thank you, Amy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No? Okay, so,
Sorry, Alice, I
Yeah.
abstained because I was not there.
okay, thank you. Did you get that?
Yep.
Okay, so tonight we have our normal work session. We do need to review the schedule as part of reviewing process because in February, Dummerston will have a revote on which day, Amy?
February 21st.
Okay. And then as part of that, yeah?
Did that change? I thought that I just recorded that it was February 12th.
No, I saw the 12th too.
I saw that somewhere, but it's
We
21st.
may need to look at the script
Okay,
Ooh.
yeah,
because I'm pretty sure I said 12.
okay.
I said this one.
And I'm pretty sure
Okay.
it said, yeah.
So we'll just cut and paste or something.
21st.
Yeah. That would have been my fault.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
No, I think I changed it because I had this one down.
That's a Sunday.
Okay, so let's go ahead and recognize folks who have some comments. Okay. Amy, did you pass around a piece of paper? As usual, folks, please list your name and the town you're from on the piece of paper that's coming around. Okay, so I'm assuming you guys have something to say. Anyone else? Okay, go ahead. Anything?
Just me?
Yes.
Just want to ask, I was looking for the more recent articles on the website, and I don't see them on the website.
January 4th?
Huh?
January 4th, I hope?
I didn't see them, but maybe they are. Is that the January 4th, the latest
Yeah.
one?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I guess I have that one somewhere. I was just looking for the newest one, the ones where you made changes the last time.
Let me check.
Oh, I've got December 13th. Do you have the 4th? For some reason, I don't have the 4th.
I have a copy here.
Oh, great, I'd love it, thank you. Do you have it right here?
Yep. If anybody else needs a copy, I've got a few. Oh, no, I don't, shoot.
You don't have it?
December.
You're as bad as I am.
Do you have anything else to add, Jody, or were you, okay.
Not at this time.
I'll confirm tomorrow morning
Okay.
that it's.
Any more
Thank you.
public comments right now? Again, at the end, if there's time, we will, as usual. Do you have a public comment? Yeah.
I just walked in, so I missed that. Is that the newest draft? Because I was trying to find the newest draft.
January 4th.
January 4th is the next one.
I have the latest one I could find online was the 15th of December.
Okay, so
So
I'll-
we'll make sure it's tomorrow we can get it on.
Okay.
There was one communication that I should have shared earlier. Last week, we found out that the Windham County superintendents and chairs of Act 46 study committees were invited up today to speak to the Windham members of the legislature. And so Lyle, at the last minute, Lyle and I said we would go up, and then due to the weather being so bad, rather than drive up, we spoke to them on the phone for 10 minutes or so this morning just to tell them where our current process is. Okay. So, let us start with discussing, the first thing on the list is the Dummerston vote in public relations. I don't know if you want to talk about what, at this stage, what we will actually, did we want to touch base on?
On emails?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, so since we're talking about communications, let's go ahead and, Beth, do you want to touch base on that?
Yes, I guess it kind of goes along with communication, but I just wanted to share that an email was forwarded to the Guilford board relating to, and I wish I had it in front of me. Actually, Alice, if you can go to something else while I look for it, I think
Yeah.
it would be good if I had it in front of me.
Okay. It would be-
Okay, yep, I found it, sorry. So it was an article again, or a email sent to the Guilford School Board that had a quote from the Vermont Digger, from a Vermont Digger article from the chair of the Senate Ed Committee, speaking specifically about school closure. And we exchanged a couple emails back and forth, just clarifying what was in our articles of agreement relating to school closure, just communicating that. So the concern from this person was that that Guilford would be a prime candidate for school closure. That was the connotation in the email. And my response was questioning why Guilford would be singled out as the obvious choice for school closure. But also I communicated what was in our articles relating to the fact that it required a unanimous vote and a year-long study process and whatnot. And then also, stated some of the benefits I see of our school that some of the other schools don't have, which would contradict the argument that Guilford was the primary choice for school closure throughout this process.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, unanimous vote. That was a change that we made, what, 2 or 3 meetings ago?
I think it was at the last
But
meeting,
you
right?
want a copy of the,
So it's now unanimous.
yeah.
So Alex,
Yes.
I'm on the website, and the latest one is of the articles that are revised is 12-1. And I think that's what I looked in the other day when you and I were talking about
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's correct, because it's, do you want to read the language? Do we want to read the language?
Yeah, if you could have someone read that article, so they're,
So, because I think that it doesn't talk about how the vote would be, if it's unanimous or not. I
Do you have
remember
a
us
copy?
discussing it, but it doesn't seem to be in.
In the latest version?
Well, the 12-1 one that's on the website.
Yeah, there's a more recent one than that.
Yeah.
It's not
That's the
same.
one that we were actually just talking about, Joe, perhaps before you came in. But- Oh, no.
Which article?
School closure.
school closure,
7.
7?
15 was the unanimous vote.
Right.
It says 3/4.
It's still 3/4 on page 7, Article D.
It was 15 that was unanimous.
So it needs to be updated
It
for
needs to be updated.
Amy.
Updated to what?
Unanimous.
Did this include?
We did vote it.
Yeah.
unanimous. Is it not in the minutes?
I think you did that from
I don't remember.
Article 15.
No, we said unanimous on the leadership council.
Yes, on the leadership council.
Leadership council,
Okay.
right,
It
right.
was,
that's what it is. I don't think it was.
Yeah.
Supermajority
We didn't
on
change
that.
that.
I didn't think it was.
School closure.
For school closure, we made it
There
unanimous.
was 3/4.
No, we did not.
3/4.
I think we've talked about it all different ways, to be honest.
So if you look at page 10, that's where we have the highlighted, a unanimous vote of the unified board shall be required to alter or remove Article 15, which is the school leadership councils. You did not have discussion about, or you didn't take any action on school closures other than the previous where it has 2/3, 3/4, I'm sorry, 3/4.
I'd like to,
I don't have notes otherwise. It's just my recollection.
I can't hear it. I'm here because it's.
Sorry, so I don't have notes otherwise, it's just my recollection, so I could be wrong, I don't agree with it then, but.
right, I think we could actually bring that back for discussion. Okay. I'm not sure we're going to have time to do that tonight.
I think it might be good if we, I mean, so we, yeah, It would be good if we could do that tonight.
Okay, so I will add that, since we're just at the start of the agenda, I will put that towards the end. But I
Should be
agree.
fairly simple.
Yeah. Okay. So the Dummerston vote is now scheduled for February 21st.
Yep.
And do we want to talk about that at all?
The information session is going to be February 13th. It's the Monday before.
Is that something we're supposed to be at?
Yeah.
No. It sounds like the Vernon Board, we had a Dummerston meeting last night. It sounds like the Vernon Board has requested to have a meeting, their meeting at Dummerston that night. So it sounds like they will all be present.
I do think the study committee should be the point of information for that information meeting.
Okay.
I mean, the Dummerston board will be there hosting it, but it's really information coming from the study committee.
So the same sort of meeting, just more in depth than we had originally?
What are people expecting? Are they expecting a presentation from us, or they, yeah?
Yeah, it's a public information session.
So it's February 13th at a certain time in Dummerston?
Is it 6 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay.
So that has in my-
Yeah. Okay. So we can share the video that we've been working on, and now it might need to be updated again, which is fine, at that meeting. Is there any other communications we should have with Dummerston folks to educate them?
I really don't like that word. We're
Okay.
educated.
What would you
Thank you.
prefer? Which word would you prefer?
I think Dummerston people are educated. I don't think that's a problem.
In answer to your question,
Educated
what
on
would
the
you prefer
issue
instead of
of
educated?
murder.
Huh?
What was the word?
Educated,
Which word would you
when they need to
prefer?
educate us.
I don't think it was meant to be offensive, Joy.
No, it was
Well,
not.
I think it is offensive, and I have found it offensive the last several times it's been used around here.
I'm a fan of the word education and educating people about what they don't know about, and the merger is something that a lot of people don't understand or know about. So you can hold your comments about how you don't like the word educated and how I use it for the end of the
Yeah,
meeting.
I've already said it. Thank you.
Yes, you have.
So Amy, when you talk to people in Dummerston, you're the only Dummerston person here tonight, right?
Yeah. No, there's
Exactly, I can't see people, it's like.
No, I've talked to a lot of people lately, and I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people lately, and I think there definitely is support for Vernon. That there's a lot of discomfort with them not being allowed to do what they feel they need to do. That's the general feel that I get. And then, and there does seem to be a more broad-based support for the study committee's proposal than we might expect. So, but
And are there questions that they weren't answered at this community forum that are coming up?
no, I think it's just the basic one that we went through last time, you know, would be good, so.
Is Christina hearing anything else?
Here.
We fielded some questions from people that had financial questions that haven't been responded to yet, so I suppose that will come up, because people want to understand the financial implications. But those questions were forwarded to Frank.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think the whole Vernon, so if Vernon leaves, then the other districts will have to pick up the costs. And I think we have to be very clear and specific about the tuition payments that offset those costs. And Frank, I know, did a pretty thorough analysis for the Vernon board prior to their vote. So I think we have to highlight that at this next meeting.
I think we have to highlight the fact that Vernon is getting released from the debt, but they've also already paid
Right.
in
Yeah.
to that material. I've heard folks not know that.
Yeah.
So who's in charge of the slideshow presentation?
I would imagine that we are.
You guys.
All right.
Yeah.
You guys are working on it? And we had one, right?
Yeah.
So just updating what Richard's saying.
Yeah.
And the video. So I think, I would imagine there'll be plenty to share with folks. Okay, anything else on Dummerston? Nope. All right. Merger vote. So if the Dummerston vote is up, then we would, what's the timing on that vote? Yeah.
I think you've seen these calendars, I just want to make sure that you have them. There's a,
Same as the last one she sent out.
yeah, on an earlier version, there was a mistake on one of the dates. So I think you've seen these. I've got copies for the public if you. If Eric could help me distribute these, that'd be great. Thank you, sir.
Do you want to talk us through this?
Yeah. So I'm going to look at the, once they get around, I'll wait until then, but I'll look at the top right-hand corner of the page. So for the February 21st revote, I think the key there is the 10-day public information period of time after February 11th and before the vote on the 21st. So that date has been selected as February 13th. Based on that date, if it's a positive vote, then the closest merger vote would be April 11th. That's assuming there's a positive vote on the 21st. And then this section on last day to submit petitions for directors, 3/6/5 p.m. I don't know that I have this, but I think we've got advice from town clerks that at one point, it just didn't leave a lot of time for board petitions. So I think the idea is to get those petitions out pretty soon so they can get them back by March 6th. And the idea is to go ahead and get the petitions out, even though it's going to be pretty close to the Dummerston revote. If it fails, then the petitions aren't going to be used at that time. But if it passes and we wait until then, there's only like, I think there's like a week, maybe 10 days before they have to submit their petition. So it's not fair to have given them that little time. So our sense is, let's get the petitions out ahead of time, give people a chance to get their signatures, and we'll see how the vote goes.
Go ahead.
I was just curious if there's a reason why April 11th, I mean, I understand, Ron, why you're saying that that is a close crunch there. Is there a reason to do the merger vote if we get, to that point, the big if? Is there a reason to do it in April? Is there another thing, or why couldn't that be pushed to give people time to really raise those petitions? Is it just being done because this is the fastest we can do it, or would it be wiser to do it in May and give people several weeks to discuss this? Because this is really crunched. The communities are just going to be digesting this vote in Dummerston, up or down, and if it is up, then this is a very short timeline for people to go, oh, there's this board and I could run for it and I got to run out and get petitions. I'm just curious if there's a reason for April 11th.
Yep. So when we met with all the town clerks prior to the December vote, and we kind of looked at all the possibilities. Okay, so if one of the towns votes this Vernon release down, what would be an alternative schedule. They came up with that April 11th date. You know, I don't think there's any reason we could put it back to April 25th. I'd again want to check with the town clerks in a meeting, but they felt that was a reasonable amount of time. And I think the fact that if we get the petitions out now, soon, it gives people plenty of time to get those petitions signatures. So that was the rationale.
Sure. We usually try to keep comments at the end, but
Okay.
let's just, if it's,
To this.
yeah, that's what I mean, if it's,
I'm Rich St. Mark Guilford. I may not have my information correctly, but I thought I heard that Governor Scott was asking for level-funded school budgets and not to pass budgets at town meeting, but to wait until May and to vote on school budgets. Wouldn't it make sense to combine this with that if there's going to be a meeting in May?
I'll just give you my opinion. I think his proposal is going to be shot down. I know the impact on all of our 7 district budgets that have already been warned and a lot of work put into them. I know because of the state per pupil, equalized pupil system, most communities are going to have level funded or below last year's budgets. Probably that has a lot to do with the legislation of special ed being consolidated by districts. So just talking to some legislators, they know that's a really hard thing for school districts to comply with. And I think there's going to be a lot of pushback on that. I would hate to have this decision based on that concept. I think we'll know the result of that in a couple of weeks through the legislature, but I guess we could adjust that at that time. But that's just my opinion.
so guys, do you think we should aim for the April 11th, or do you want to push it back some?
If it was just a date picked by the town clerks, then I think we should ask them if we can buy ourselves more time for the petitions instead of.
Frank, this is Frank Rucker. We're talking about potentially pushing off the April 3rd merger date, April 11th merger date. And we're not seeing any real rationale not to push it off towards further into April.
Alex, I thought there was a rationale by
Well, that's
Frank-
why I spoke,
by Frank before with the budgets and trying to get everything ready for July 1st, that knowing sooner, much sooner, like October, November was your preference, so that any couple weeks would be better for you all?
Well, I know the study committee report is suggesting that we operationalize July 1st. So obviously, the closer we get to July 1st, in an April or May vote, the more difficult it is to prepare for that transition. So I think it would be helpful to have a conversation with the AOE about, well, given there will be town meeting votes, can we assume that those votes of the electorate will put the budgets forward for the new entity if it does get approved? That is the major issue, because the new entity won't have sufficient time to organize, warn a budget, have a budget vote, and then be ready to operate July 1st. So if the AOE gives us an opinion on that, then I don't see a problem with moving toward May with a vote, because as long as we have the resources to operate based on the town meeting action, then it seems to me we're good to go, but we need to get that clarified.
so I would suggest that we ask Ron to give a call, and based on Frank's thoughts. I mean,
I think in general, we've gotten the impression that that's likely, but we haven't formalized it because everything is in flux.
right. I think the more folks can learn about the merger and decide whether they want to run for positions, the better, but obviously we need to be reasonable. Okay?
Just so I understand, so the question is, can we take the budgets that will presumably be approved for the individual districts and utilize those combined for the unified district?
Yeah,
That's the question to the AOE.
right.
And if they say yes, then you see no reason why we can't push the state a little bit.
Yeah, it's still gonna be a real challenge to create the new entity and make it operational within 30 or 60 days. Most systems that are doing this are taking at least 9 months or a year to create the new entity, to transfer health insurance plans, retirement plans, and so on. So I think as part of our conversation, we'll make sure we have a provision for that, in terms of support, because clearly we don't have the resources to do that, just a few of us. So we'll cover that.
Okay. Sound good, everyone?
So the decision in the end is we're gonna wait for a comment back and then come back to this?
Yeah.
So tentatively, when, right, based on the current calendar, when can people take out petitions?
I'd say we can get them out next week.
When?
Next week.
Does it really matter when the vote is to have the petitions out more time in advance? Doesn't matter, right?
Is there a date on the petition?
They have to be back by a certain time, so it's just to give them more time to get signatures.
But there's no legal statute about you can only have 10 weeks or 1 week?
Yeah, there is.
There is?
Yeah.
Yep.
So we can't really say definitely this is when we're
Well,
going to send them
so,
out?
just as an example, if there's an April 11th merger vote, they'd have to be due back March 6th. So I'm assuming if there's a May 2nd merger vote, then they have to be back, whatever the corresponding difference is.
But still, there's no penalty for having it out longer.
No. It's
So
when they have to be
release
returned. Yeah.
Do we have to have a formal vote on releasing it? We voted once before to release the petitions, and then we
Yeah, no, I don't think you need that.
never went forward.
All right? Sound good? All right. So the next thing on the agenda is community education and outreach. We are doing the video. Is there any?
Did we skip leadership council reps nominated at town meeting?
We did. Let's go ahead and do that. What do you guys talk to our legal counsel?
Yeah, Chris Leopold felt like even though the merger vote would be not at town meeting, based on the language that we have in the articles, it makes sense for at town meeting that the unified board candidates would be nominated, as we have in our language. So,
What about the
page 10.
Are you talking about leadership?
Yeah,
This is unified board. Sorry.
leadership council positions. So, so leadership councils, it has the makeup. 3 community members nominated at town meeting shall be appointed by the district board. So again, he recommended keeping those nominations at town meeting.
even though we don't know if we're even going to need them?
It's the same concept as the petitions. Even though we don't know how the vote goes, it's best to get that in place. And if it doesn't pass, then nothing happens with those positions.
And so how would that nomination work
I don't know.
logistically? Is it on the floor? Is it on Australian ballot?
I think they said it was.
It's on the floor.
On the floor.
Yes, that was me. You weren't at the last.
Vote on it ballot-wise.
What's that?
You can't vote on it ballot-wise.
No.
So
No, it'd be
it has to be on the floor.
Right.
What happens if there's more than 3 nominations?
The one with the most yes votes.
You have to go to a paper ballot, probably.
They're just nominated, and then it's the
What
board
if-
that
But what
makes
if
the
4
decision.
people are nominated? Then what
When the
happens?
board decides,
Then
right?
the new unified board would make the decision about which 3.
Right.
Because they're appointed by the unified board.
Okay.
So, if 4 people were nominated from Guilford, then the new unified board would appoint 3 of those 4 people.
And wouldn't you think that the town would make those decisions for themselves?
Is there anything that would prevent the town from,
Right.
Putney, for example, for having 5 people whose names came forward, but that from the floor, we decided that it would be these 3, and we passed those 3 on.
If you did
I
that,
think our
yeah.
language says 3, I think our language says 3 will be appointed, so
Yeah.
there's nothing in our articles language that would allow the leadership, the super board to choose. We don't have that language now, so. We assume that that's coming from the town, our
Right.
articles.
Yes.
How are we choosing leadership councils for bands in the high school?
In this first situation, yeah.
Yeah, because all the other schools are by town.
Well, I think, well, it probably would be at the high school meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
At the high school meeting?
I would- I-
The budget?
The budget, yeah.
Well, we do more than just the budget at that meeting, but yeah. It's not just the budget, it's other stuff.
So anything else on that?
So I guess I'm still trying to play it out. So
Yep.
in Brattleboro, we would be looking for as many leadership council people as we want, because we can decide how we're gonna divide that out. Each town is looking for 1 or 2 for each. I mean, what do
You're
we
looking
say
for more than that.
Huh?
You're looking for more than that.
Yeah, because in Brattleboro, for instance, at representative town meeting day, there would have to be there would need to be 9, at least 9 names nominated, 3 for each school in Brattleboro.
That's my question. We
Yeah.
also have the Head Start program,
Okay, so, and then that as well.
and then you're thinking all of the folks for the high school are gonna come during that meeting, and it's gonna be a similar amount of people, we don't.
I don't know. I mean, that's something we have to figure out. But it would make the most sense. And then again, it would have to be 9 from that pool of people as well, because 3 for the high school, 3 for the middle school, and 3 for the career center.
So we've pretty much got half the town in the leadership council now.
Yeah,
That's a lot of people.
there's a lot of people.
So I
Which
would,
is why the leadership councils are really good, because it gives
Yeah.
a lot of people a voice in what's going on in their schools.
so I would suggest that we all take this discussion back to our boards and work through it, any of the details.
I have one other question. If you're thinking of running for the super board and then you're nominated from the leadership council, there's no mechanism. Now you've only nominated 2 at town meeting, and they'll be potentially nominated to the super board later. So then you'd only have 2. So how do we handle that?
So anybody who's running for the unified board
Can't.
should be leadership
Yeah,
council.
should not accept the nomination from the floor at the town meeting.
It's kind of too bad, because if you had, a lot of interest, those would be the same people that would be interested in doing that, but it's too bad.
Well, the other end is that the super board could then make a decision about, as it does when it has openings and other kinds of roles, could appoint somebody to take the role of
Open
something.
it up.
Yeah.
Post and open, both of
Yeah.
them.
One other thing, just so, most of our warnings are either approved or about to be approved, so I would assume, would this be under like the other business to be
Yeah.
transacted? Yeah.
Yeah. So who has gone through that process already?
Dummerston has.
For the warnings? Or, yeah,
I mean, we.
UHS has.
What did
Yeah.
you just say, Frank? That
We have-
if it goes under other business, like when we elect people in Brattleboro for the librarian board, I mean, there's a bunch of them, and they're actual mornings in Brattleboro.
yeah.
Yeah, Guilford's under other business.
So I think they have to be
This
listed.
is nomination, it's a different thing than like.
I think it would need to be a separate warning, wouldn't it? Your article, whatever.
So they're not a warning, they're just up from the floor at the end or some kind.
I think you've got-
Our town
I
moderator.
think we would
and stuff.
develop
Our town
language.
moderator's here.
But he's that's a separate article.
Go ahead, Ron.
I think we would develop language from our articles that would be under other business that all of your boards are gonna be explaining Act 46 in the merger during your town meetings and other. And so this would be something that we would read and take nominations.
My question is like, our articles go into our town report, and if it's not specifically put into the report, then are people going to be informed properly?
But I think at your information meetings, it's important to get that information out, that word out.
I just want to make sure
Yeah, and
we're
I think
clear.
we can have the language for those information meetings.
Yeah.
I'm the moderator in Guilford, and I've only been in the job for a couple of years, so there's a whole lot I don't know, but the warning's been printed, was last week, it was finalized. My understanding is that you cannot conduct town business, without a warned article. So that if there's an election, I think it has to be warned. You can get a sense of the town, under other business, but I don't think you can really conduct town business under other business.
It can come from the floor.
Let me read the other. Article 8, Guilford as an example. To transact any other business that may legally come before the meeting. So that would be one that we explain what those nominations are about. Article 7, as an example, a brief report outlining the pros and cons of the merger and alternatives to the merger to be presented to voters at least 1 month before the voters are asked to vote. So I know there'll be information about Act 46 then, and then this Article 8 would be some language about nominating for the advisory council. So that's typically done in every district.
Yeah.
Information in Brattleboro.
Can you say who you are? Yeah.
Representative Town Meeting Member, Brattleboro. We often lose a quorum right around time that other comes up. So I'd recommend that some sort of publicity be put out saying we really need town meeting reps to stay to handle this piece of business.
We're going to attempt to quickly go through a hopefully non-contentious budget part for the school board this year. So then at least people will be more inclined to stay. But I hear you, I have that same concern. And I'm still muddling in my head, Ricky, this idea of how that should be the high school.
I mean, I'm just, based on what we were saying, I'm not sure.
Well, I'm wondering if it makes sense to also take the leadership council reps from the different towns at the same time as you're taking leadership. So Dummerston would have a leadership council for the Dummerston school, but also to go to the currently BUHS 6.
Right.
And then it wouldn't have to come from this other meeting, which might not have the attendance of a lot of people from. A lot of
Can I
people
suggest
way.
that you two get together and talk about this? Unless you feel like you've resolved it already? And then come back to our next meeting and talk to us?
It's not us to decide.
Well, but you can,
It's all the outlying towns too.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I think there's really two ways to go. I mean, do this really quickly. I mean, we can either do it at the February 14th BUHS meeting to get those 9, or as Jill just pointed out, instead of asking for 3 from each town at town meeting, we can ask for 4, or however, we'll do the math and figure that out, and ask for that number from each town, so that, but they're like, because we're sitting in Guilford, I'll use a Guilford example, 3 that will be on the Guilford town leadership, the Guilford School Leadership Committee, and then however many to serve on the BUHS, BAMS, or the Career Center Leadership Council. And we just break up those 9 seats among the 4 towns in some sort of even fashion. And do it that way. And then just have, so Guilford would nominate, instead of nominating 3, it would nominate 4, but one of those would be going to the high school or to BAMS or
I like that idea, because I think you're gonna get more direct local
Yep.
involvement versus going to.
Which
the
is fine,
budget
it's fine with me.
meeting.
I'll do that.
I like that idea, and then I think we just maintain what the current board structure is, that many people.
Yep.
All right.
In which case, why wouldn't we then say that those elected to the BUHS board, which we're going to do anyway, because we have to do that, would then just move into those leadership council roles? They've been elected for that first year, so because you already have folks who are then elected to serve in that capacity. That board goes away once the full board.
Right, but that's the same with all the other towns, all towns as well. That for instance, like my seat in the BUHS board is not up for election this year.
Mhm.
So if nothing happens with the merger, I'm still on the BUHS
Right.
board for next year, after March. That's fine. But if I choose to run
Right.
for the new unified board, then my position at BUHS would be dissolved if, assuming merger goes through, and July 1, I'm on the new board. But of the 9 members that are on the BUHS board, they may not choose to serve.
Right.
So forcing them into a choice,
Okay.
whereas somebody from, if, for instance, Sean Murphy no longer wanted to run, didn't want to serve on the leadership council anymore, but forcing him to have to be
Okay.
would be,
But he would have, because he would have already.
because his position would be getting dissolved.
I get it. Yep.
Right.
So Richard, that goes back to what you had said a while ago, which was why I was confused on this. You said, well, since we didn't have a town meeting vote, because the article said we were going to be voting at town meeting for the
Right.
leadership councils, and now that we are not going to have a merger for sure decision, yes or no, by town meeting, then this whole conversation comes up, and that was exactly my concern too, is why, how long would people, you'd said before, well, then I guess we just continue on, those of us on the school board. But if the merger goes through, all
Then
of those boards are dissolved.
Are dissolved, right. But I understand the point.
As of July 1st,
As of July.
right?
Right,
So we're still holding elections
yes,
from March to July, no matter what,
Yes.
to cover that.
Right.
yes.
And if sitting local board members who don't want to take out a petition for a unified board position know they would like to be served on a leadership council, they could be nominated at town meeting.
Right.
Which would be interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
Are we going to write this up somehow so that we all have a understanding of what we just talked about?
Amy's gonna write it up for the minutes in such a way that we will all have it crystal clear.
Sure.
I'm just thinking that would be a good question and answer type thing to put out there somewhere, like, how does that work?
For,
Yeah, for our
And-
town discussions, yeah.
And I did a little bit of math while we were talking. And if we go with the town meeting for everybody, try to spread out the ones for BUHS, BAMS, and the Career Center, by my guess, it would be like Dummerston would have to nominate 3 for Dummerston School and 2 that would serve on one of those 3 other leadership councils. And then Guilford and Putney would also be the same. Brattleboro would have to do 9 for the 3 schools, plus Head Start, which I don't even know, so we need 3 for Head Start.
one by law.
So that's 12, plus 3, 1 for BAMS, BUHS, and Career Center. So the 15 would have to come out of the Brattleboro representative town meeting.
Guilford would need a BAMS rep as well.
Well, what I'm saying is that because Guilford, for instance, and Brattleboro send kids to all 3 schools. But if we kind of kept it, okay, we'll figure that out, but I just kind of broke them up evenly amongst the town, because there's 9 and there's 4, so I put the extra one in Brattleboro. But it's, because we're not, because unless we gave 3 to then we would have only 2 in Brattleboro doing the same thing, and they send kids to all 3 of those schools too. Do you know what I'm saying?
We have no at-large leadership councils, right?
No.
So I think we need to figure out how to let folks know what these 2 positions are in their communities. Because if, sooner rather than later, because if the vote is February 21st, right? We want to make sure people understand pretty solidly what their options are if they're interested in serving. So I would like us to come up with some sort of plan to do that.
Well, I think word could go out via the town clerks.
Mm-hmm.
I know Dummerston, we've got an email list that, residents can sign up for it, but she can send out a notice saying that in addition to normal business, we'll also be considering this. And then to refer to the the information meeting for more details.
We need to solidify how many nominations at each town first. I don't think we've gotten that yet.
I thought Ricky just did that.
But
I think it needs to be reviewed.
yeah.
And I'm hoping, Ricky, that you're gonna take this on.
Okay.
Okay. And then, once it's settled, someone needs to be sitting down, or at least talking to the moderators, and having them understand the process and the considerations. Okay?
I'm a little concerned if Brattleboro too, it's a representative town meeting.
Yep.
So the people that might want to serve on a leadership council, like a parent that's really excited, might have nothing to do with the Brattleboro town meeting on a
Right.
normal basis. And I wouldn't want that to preclude them being nominated and being excited about that. So I'm just trying to think through what's the best process for getting the word out and for getting those names back to be nominated. And
School newsletters?
Yes, just about to say newsletters.
Well, and I was thinking the same thing, Jill, and my thought too would I know for like the elementary schools, stuff like that, there's some sort of parent-teacher organizations in a lot of those schools too, and that if there's some parents that are really active in there, just making sure that somebody's having conversations with those groups too.
yeah,
to
I think it
help
has
get
to
the
be
word out.
along those lines, not just an announcement, it has to be an actual outreach and
Yeah.
searching.
And does that mean it needs to be a gathering of people and explaining things, or?
I don't know, with informal conversations, with, if you talk to the principals and they kind of help identify, because it's brand new too. We kind of need to look at who is already involved and would be interested.
Do you have regular PTO meetings that you could bring that up at? Make sure those folks understand?
Not very well attended.
So we all know you have to share information with people several times in order for them to actually start processing it and look, paying attention to dates. So we really do need to get on this. And if the 3 schools in Brattleboro if we're sort of passing this on to you guys, if you need help with that in any way, you should let us know, because it's a heavy load.
Well, I think we all need the same materials. We need to have a description, right?
Yeah.
And then we need to be able to send that out and then be able to talk to people about it.
And send it out again and again. Right?
But we need to have something that says the same thing for all of us. It's the
Yeah.
same idea.
All right? Did you have something, Eric?
I don't know if I can comment, but I just want to, Eric Findell, Guilford School Board. I know, I just want to express my concern that pushing to have these nominations done at town meeting, I think we just signed, we just signed on to having a conversation at the town meeting about Act 46. So I think people are going to be coming to the meeting expecting a conversation and a talk. And I think throwing nominations at them at the same time, I think is going to confuse people. And I think it might come off as being a little pushy. And I think at this point, I guess what I would request is that we have a very creative group of people. If we can try to think of some other ways that we could do this, I would suggest it.
Are you thinking just for this first time, and then going forward, we could do the town meeting?
Yeah, I wasn't
nominations?
even thinking beyond this, but I just think
Yeah.
for myself, going to the town meeting, and we're going to get to our conversation about Act 46, and then we're going to say, okay, so now who wants to be nominated? And people are going to be like, we don't even know how that conversation is going to go. So people are going to be like, well, what are we doing, and what am I getting nominated for? So I guess it could go fine, and that's great. But if there's any other ways that people could think of to do this, and I don't know, I mean, if it has to happen at town meeting, that's fine. But if it can happen at some other point and through other means, I would be interested in looking
I
at
mean,
that.
can it happen at the time? Can it happen at the time? No, it can't happen at the time.
Richard's point last time, where I joked about Hotel California.
Yeah.
But, I mean, those of us that are on the board have already committed to a certain point. And I guess we'd have to look at each one of the boards, whether there are 3 at least, in the case of everybody but us, that would be on the school board. To me, it seems like those folks are the natural transition to the leadership council. It's problematic at our schools, but not impossible.
Kind of like a transition period.
So the transitional year too, and then the articles of agreements would stand, and people would be able to, the next year, know what Act 46, if it's already in place and been working.
Which actually would offer some continuity between the existing board that really has signed on for a full term to kickstart the leadership.
I think it's very likely too that you could end up with some empty seats. I think it's very likely in Brattleboro's case. And the board's gonna end up having to appoint people as time goes on anyways. So that probably would happen regardless of how you did it.
I mean, in our case, we would not have, because we only have a 5-member board, and 3 of them are going off this year. And I don't know if there's petitions taken out to fill all those spots.
I really appreciate the comment about that there is a certain presumption in us doing all of this at once, and I get it from being sitting here going through all this process and watching our timeline, to step back for a moment and think about how the community members will feel, for some of whom may not hear the tremendous detail until that moment, and then to say, oh, by the way, we are, just in case, we're going to, there is a benefit to using all of that time to really talk about Act 46 and the potential merger, and then say in that first year what we're going to do is some version of what we just described, with the understanding that in the next town meeting you will as a community appoint folks, nominate folks for that leadership council.
So question for the Articles of Agreement, do we have to spell that out in the Articles of Agreement and have the transition information in there for the first year for the leadership councils?
What does our article of agreement say specifically right now, Ryan?
Town meetings.
It's very clear.
I think we could add in just a couple sentences saying for the first year, a transition period will include the existing members of the town school board filling the roles of these leadership councils, and then starting the first full year of the unified district, they'll be elected at town meeting.
Did you write?
That's Richard's job. We have our roles now. Been together for a long time.
Well, if
I didn't get it, Amy, did you get it?
if we want to do that, and I would suggest that we hear a motion on that, we would probably need to vote on it.
Motion of the way you just said it.
Could you say that again?
That the leadership council roles would be filled during a transition period, or during a transition period for the first year, the leadership council roles would be filled by the existing school board, town school board members. After the first year of transition, they would be elected at town meeting.
So I friendly
Nominated.
friendly amendment that, so that you couldn't say after the first year, because it won't be a full year, but until the first town meeting.
Until, right, yeah.
Probably don't have enough bodies though.
And I've been doing some quick check-in on the WSESU website. Putney, Guilford, Brattleboro Town, and Dummerston all have 3 members going off this year. And people would presumably be getting re-elected in March at that time. Just, so it might be people that are currently sitting and saying, sure, I'll do it, it might not be, who knows. And then also, how does this affect if, for instance, somebody is still on, is going to get appointed to being on leadership council, but they are choosing to run for the new unified board?
The outlying towns should have enough, because we have 5, right? And so if you had 1 person on the unified board and 3 on the leadership, you still have 1 left over. But they have their own board, right?
In theory, yeah.
Okay.
Brattleboro.
And three
It's
of the,
Brattleboro's the problem.
three of
We're
those are
gonna
new.
take one comment from the floor and then we're, yeah.
Andy Davis. I've been reading the articles, and the thing about the leadership councils, at one point they say they're school-based, and the town meeting is a real town function thing. So when I think about Brattleboro with these three distinct schools, it says that the principal and, I mean, there's even a description of having student involvement. It seems a little, I'm having trouble sort of squaring the circle that there's going to be this big discussion at town meeting to appoint people for the different schools when the first paragraph of the school leadership councils is school-based. And I almost feel like that ought to be maybe talked about in the language fine-tuned, because I can understand it for a town perhaps like Guilford where there's one school, but you're having three people on the board, so someone who really hasn't had a lot of contact with one of the particular schools in Brattleboro is suddenly sort of assigned, you're on the leadership council because the town meeting chose you to be on your leadership. Get what I'm saying? There's sort of a little,
We do want people who are very involved in those schools to be on the leadership council.
Yeah.
So that's the whole idea.
So that's why we were talking about how we need to actually have those names, and so that's where
Right.
Ricky and I were saying it's probably not gonna be people that normally come to Brattleboro's representative town meeting. They're gonna have to be names that are thought of ahead
Right.
of time and brought to the floor.
That's the only point, to make them really school-based, because these aren't people that are going to be working and approving the budget the way current school members are. These are people whose primary interest is going to be the composition of the school, how the school community feels, how instruction is going, how, it's a different role. So to
Yeah.
pull from that same body, just to make sure you're clear on that.
I think we're very, very clear on
Okay,
it.
because I think in the articles, it's not clear, the way they're worded now.
I would say that, yeah.
I'm okay with it, Andy. If you have a specific wording you wanna throw in there, throw it up, but I thought we were really, that's what we've talked about all along, that they're school-based. So in Brattleboro, they're gonna be nominated at town meeting, but they've gotta be done ahead of time and talked about ahead of time. My personal experience is the folks that I see running around at parent-teacher meetings and in the halls and doing things and leading winter sports and chaperoning field trips, and I think those are the folks that are gonna wanna be on the leadership council. Those aren't the same people that sit there for our very enjoyable, very long town meeting.
These are the people who are on teacher hiring committees. That's a role of the leadership council.
And you
So-
want to get those names in front of the town meeting, in front of the town meeting reps in Brattleboro and in front of the.
There's going to have to be some effort to make that happen. The idea is to
Right.
give them more.
There's just some talk about having existing board members sort of become these members of the, and that's what I was reacting to.
Yeah.
And I think it really needs to be people that are deeply connected with those individual schools.
Yeah, I would say, I agree. It's the concern of how to do it the first year.
First year would be the school board members, but after that, we'd be going to more leadership thing, but even in that
School
first
board
year.
members plus other.
Right, and in the first year, we're not gonna be able to, in Brattleboro specifically, we don't have enough to get to leadership council, so we're gonna have to.
You use high school as we need to fill 15 seats, and there's only 10 of us between the high school and the town school board anyway.
So what about language that says, for the transition years, school leadership councils will be filled by existing town school board members, supplemented by appointments by the new supervisory board. At the first town meeting following the merger, leadership councils will be determined through nominations from the town meeting per the Articles of Agreement.
So we don't have to get into how the unified board gets those names,
That will-
we're understanding that that'll come.
In the way that you describe, you want people who are local, that would be the.
So, sorry, is there a motion? Is that a motion? Because if we're going to have discussion, I want to.
That's motion, just.
Yeah,
Was that your motion?
That's my
Is that your idea? Yes.
Is
So
there-
moved as Richard.
Is
just
there a
said.
second? Okay, any discussion from the committee and then to the floor?
Should we go back and talk to our boards if they're willing to fill that role before we make this motion?
No.
I mean, Guilford, you could probably, it seems like that might be the appropriate way to go about things.
Well, I think we're going on the assumption that people that are already on the board who are not getting off in 17 anyway are gonna be, we knew they were gonna have to stay if merger didn't happen. And because we don't know whether or not merger's gonna happen yet, when it comes time to vote anyway, all those seats that could theoretically become vacated in 17 would have to get filled anyway.
I don't think we're asking them to commit to anything more than what they've already committed
That they're already committing to, so.
And they
And if
certainly
they-
do not need to do it.
Right, they could
There's
say no, and then there would need to be someone else who would.
Yeah, they could say no.
Absolutely.
Right, I think that's the, like, we should just have a thought process about it.
Yeah.
If they don't, if it's not all they want to go.
So Erin, you had a question or
Well,
comment?
I just have a comment. Erin Kachuk, Guilford School Board. I just want to speak up for school board members currently in the fact that we all are deeply involved in our schools. And I just want to make that perfectly clear, especially at Guilford. We are deeply involved in the building and on hiring committees, leadership councils. I mean, I want to make that perfectly clear that we are the people that are deeply involved.
Yeah.
So.
Did you have a question? You put up your hand earlier.
Oh,
you're
no,
not.
when she
Okay.
changed the words, it was all good.
Okay, one more question, yeah.
Yeah, I'm Nancy Becker from Guilford, and I'm just wondering why we can't, if we're gonna vote on the merger in April, and if it passes, so we've signed on, the people have spoken, and they're going to have this merger. Why do we have to put it in place immediately? Why couldn't we wait so that all these things can be worked out in that first year?
Because, for instance, you have to vote on the board members the same time you're voting on the merger, the unified board, by statute. That's the way the law was written.
So that's Act 46.
That's part of the Act
Well,
46.
that's statute, yeah.
Yes. And so, and then the other part is that if we pass July 1st, 2017 under current reading of that law, unless it's changed, but it has not changed, and we have very little time left, the tax benefits that are written in go away. That is how it is written.
And how long are those tax benefits? Just
8, 6, 4, 2. 4 years.
4 years.
4 years?
All right,
We
so,
missed the 10 cent first year.
so there's a motion on the floor.
Can
You wanna-
based on Christina said, I added a line, so now, for the transition year, school leadership councils be filled by existing town school board members willing to serve in this new role, supplemented by appointments by the new supervisory board. Is that, get?
So that was a friendly amendment.
If you're willing to serve, is that?
You comfortable? Who seconded that? You guys?
I did.
Yeah.
You're okay? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? No? Can I get the wording?
Yep.
Yeah. I think he's going to email it to you right now.
Oh,
Awesome. Technology. You did, Amy.
I got you there.
Okay. I'll give it. Okay, so at the end of our work session, we were going to talk about the topic of whether it was going to be for school closure. What was the
Oh, yeah.
language?
Yeah.
Can we go ahead and do that now?
Yes.
And then talk about the community outreach and review afterwards?
Sure.
So.
Do you have a motion to
Yes,
propose?
I have a motion to change the language of the articles to read that school closure would require a unanimous vote of all 9 members.
Is there
I'll
a second?
second that motion.
Is there any discussion?
We have a moment to discuss, because we've been Switzerland all the time on the leadership thing, but we've not talked about this in Brattleboro. So can we have a moment to just think for a second?
Yeah.
You guys can do the same thing.
And, well, can I just say, so it's different for me than what we've talked about before, although I thought we'd already done this, but I know we talked about requiring a positive vote from the town, and that's not what the motion is, that we include the town input, but that it requires the unanimous vote of the 9 members, which would include the representative from the town, but.
We did talk about a unanimous vote for that at one point. But like you, this is based on recollection.
Okay, yeah.
But having been a participant and then retyping it back up, it sticks in my head. But yes, we did talk about that, but we decided not to. We did go on to the leadership, Article 15, the Leadership Council issue, and that was a no-brainer about a unanimous vote.
But you don't recall why we didn't?
Remember Mark Mooney saying you can never get 9 people to approve unanimous. It's a big decision.
All right. Any?
The language right now is 3/4.
I think that's one of the big issues amongst all the towns. And I think that would be one of the deciding factors whether to vote it to or fro. I know most of our small outlying schools are really would like this clause in there to protect us. I highly suggest that we keep it in if we even want to have an inclination of getting this passed.
Any further discussion?
Just coming back, so 3/4 of a, my math is going to show, 3/4 of a 9-person board would mean you would need to have 7, right? So 2 people could vote no, and that would still be 3/4, is that right? Yeah. So it means, by going with the 3/4 language, it means 2 out of the 9 can vote no. And given the nature, I think, I also agree with the comment that it's really hard to get 9 people on anything. And it concerns me that one person who might be there for a variety of reasons could hold up any of those kinds of decisions. That's a hard one for me to get my head around, to say that it would have to be unanimous at that level. Even as a small town member. Yeah.
May I ask a question at this juncture? We're voting on a school closure. Are we actually talking about the super board or the new board?
The unified board.
Unified board, thank you. Funding the continued operation of any of the schools? Is that the bottom line? Are we going to at one point close the school by no longer funding the heating plant, the electricity, maintenance for that particular building? Is that what we're talking about? Because if that's the case, there is nothing to prevent the town itself from picking up the cost of the lights, the heat, and the maintenance. So in effect, we would withdraw school funding for that particular school, but the town in which that school is located still has the prerogative to maintain that school for public meetings, for any other function that they so choose. So our vote is not necessarily to board up the school, it's simply withdraw funding for that particular school if it comes to that point, and I don't anticipate that.
Well, what's written in there though is if the unified board would decide to close a school, which I don't know that we've ever considered it in that way, but it's written as closing the school, then the town can buy back the building for $1.
Okay, sure.
So it's their building, so they would already have it. So I think really what we're talking about is the unified board would make a decision to close the school. And there's no like cutting off funding or whatever.
Right.
Close the school and sell back the school.
For a buck.
For $1.
It's like the decision when, in 2002, when the Brattleboro Town School District decided to close Canal Street School as a elementary school, and then it used it as early ed services. Other communities have, like Brookline, merged with Newfane, and Brookline used that as an early ed center. So it's still within the community, and it's still being used by the community, but maybe not necessarily as anticipated by the builders of that particular brick-and-mortar building.
I think that's a little
weird.
Yeah, you're getting a little off topic. We're talking more about operating, having staff and students in the building, and not the maintenance portion of it. So.
Well, then another thing I have read, please correct me if I misread someplace, that there's an initiative in the state of Vermont where they are trying to fund a birth until preschool educational program for kids. Have I misread that someplace?
So,
Birth until preschool, so like, 0, 1, 2, and 3, until they get to the school year before. I heard that was being kicked around someplace.
Where, in what place?
Pardon?
In what town?
State of Vermont.
Oh, state of Vermont.
I haven't seen that.
Maybe it was just an aside that I saw. I apologize if that is incorrect. But the real question, what you're talking about is, what number of votes? Is it unanimous, or is it 3/4 vote to do whatever you're talking about?
so 7 versus 9.
Right.
Any discussion? Do you want to?
I just feel like we hashed through this before, and we've gotten to this very same point. And the things that Richard said about the majority, a 3/4 majority being 7 of the 9, I mean, this is all, it's echoing in my head, so it's.
Yeah, we've done it a couple
Yeah.
times.
Can we just vote then? I mean, Alice said it, this is huge for Guilford.
Well, and I know that, if I can just say that, I know that having been sat on a 9-person board for most of my time on the school board, more times than not, all 9 of us end up agreeing. Especially when it's a even if it's a controversial decision, and like this would be a controversial decision, but we would have spent
A year.
a whole bunch of time getting to that point. You know, it's not like, you know, we just walk into a meeting and it's like, oh, by the way, I have to add this to the agenda.
And we
We're gonna
also,
vote to close a school. It's not that way. So even on all the years that I've been on the BUHS board, it's 9 members, typically, we pretty much always agree. I mean,
And I think the
we tend to
reason
not.
for me is we had the discussion about, we're gonna know if there's a reason. If you have 30 kids in a school, do you keep it open? I mean, we're gonna know.
we're not gonna
So
want
as
our
we-
kids going to.
That's
a
my
school
reason of
that-
going, for the unanimous. We're gonna know after a year-long discussion, and we see all the evidence, we're gonna know as a board unanimously what to do.
Yeah, because
Okay,
it's best interest for the kids, and at some point, it's gonna be pretty obvious that this school is too small to be receiving quality education, and it's not viable anymore. Please vote.
And my wish is really that we never get to this point, really. I mean, I don't think that we will, but we gotta have ourselves protected.
Okay, any more question, any more discussion?
I was going to just add, you're probably aware there's several schools with less than 30 students operating in Vermont, and they are showing no sign of being interested in merging. So it is likely possibility.
I guess my one thought that goes through my head is that I could see easily a situation where, and I think this has happened in the discussion with Brattleboro and the 6th graders moving over to band, that it's come up several times, where I think it made sense to the whole board, but politically, it didn't make sense to the board members to do it. And so it didn't get done, even though that was from what I understand, and I wasn't part of those discussions, it's happened 3 times. So I can see a situation, I think we see it played out regularly on a political scale, national, whatever, that you don't make the decision because of what's the best, but you make the decision because all the people in your town are gonna hate you if you don't say what you think you should say. And I'm with Richard, getting to 9 is trickier, getting to 100% agreement on anything. And we can say that we all have been pretty agreeing here, and we have, but there's still been moments when, like Beth is bringing this up right now, so clearly we've had this discussion before and it's still in Beth's head.
I thought it was already done, honestly.
So, I mean, none of us are ever gonna be of 100%
And to be honest,
agreement all the
part
time.
of it is we've had in the last couple of weeks, we've had some communications to us regarding this issue in particular. And this is a grave concern within the community.
Well, and I honestly 100% thought we had already voted, so we've been telling that from the Guilford board, because that's what we thought it was, so we have to re-communicate if that's not the case, so.
I mean, I really, that's why I spend so much time writing through the year-long process that you guys didn't want to leave in that prescriptive, and I understand that, but because for me, I wanted to think through exactly that question. Beth and I even had a discussion about, I think it once at Price Chapter, that because it does, I absolutely see this concern and understand this concern. It's easier to sit in the Brattleboro chair because we have 3 schools, and if you close one of ours, we've still got 2. We're the bigger town by far. You close somebody like Guilford, there's not a lot else here in Guilford. I understand that. There's a lot more in Putney, a little bit more in Dummerston, but Guilford in particular, this is a really small community. But I kind of come back to tying the hands of the board and the feeling that it's saying that this has to be unanimous feels like too high of a bar. We have to set this merger has to be set up so that we can react. And we have statistics that show that there's declines in schools and population. We're setting it up so that we can shift kids around, we could move things and make this school closure hopefully never an issue.
You have to be able to get to the unified board to make those decisions, and I think this question could prevent some towns from going with the
Right, so if I look at that really selfishly,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
you guys are the ones that suffer first. This is where I struggle blowing myself. Because we can go a lot longer. We have 3 schools. If we close one school, we're not closing down our community. I get that. I have struggled with this the entire time. But at the same time, I struggle with the other side of being fair to all of the communities. And I watch people come to these meetings, just ready and hysterical nearly about this possibility when we haven't even discussed it and we're putting in safeguards. And I can only imagine if we get to that point, the pressures that would be out there on a unified board.
Can I ask one more thing? I also think that so much going into that language was designed to safeguard small schools. So everything else in that section, in terms of how we get to that point, prioritizes the role of a small school in a small community like Guilford, like Putney, like Dummerston. And so this last piece to me seems like we're asking, that's a really high bar after we've spent so much time offering up the mechanism to get, when we come to a decision for that really forces the supervisory board in this case to privilege in many ways small schools like Putney all the way through that. So I think have done that before, and then to ask it to be a unanimous decision is really asking a lot of the other communities. I really agree with what Jill just said.
Judy? I'm in full agreement with Alice and Beth, and I think Dummerston feels the same way. And I know I have asked time and time again about putting it to a vote of a town before you close the school. And I've been reading a lot of articles that have gone in throughout the state, and a whole lot of them have that clause in it. What you're talking about is backing off from that and just having a unanimous vote. And I think Dummerston will feel the same way. And I understand Jill doesn't understand and has empathy for the small towns, because that is a big issue to all the small towns.
I do understand.
I do have empathy for it.
I absolutely have empathy for this. But I'm going to stick with, I'm with Richard on this one. I think Richard spoke probably more eloquently than I. You can put it to a vote, though. I mean, do we have a motion?
Yeah, there's a
on the floor?
motion on the floor.
Yeah,
We have it.
can you read the motion again?
Motion is to alter the language in the Articles of Agreement to require a unanimous vote of all 9 unified board members in order to close a school.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye.
I'm trying to think if there's something else that we say to I guess it's what Richard says. We have put through, I spent a long time writing the year-long thing, that we would walk through it. And I think we've gotta show that to townspeople. It's not the intent. We put in the 5 years as well. And we're trying to set this up so that we don't. I mean, right now, I've said that before, right now, Guilford could be swallowed up by Brattleboro schools and it wouldn't take us any more resources if you closed tomorrow.
Although I have to say,
But that's not what we
if
wanna
I
do.
was on this board and one of the schools had to close in 5, in 10 years, chances are good, I would want it to be one of the Brattleboro schools
And I would
rather
too.
than Guilford, and figure out, I would want to commute Brattleboro kids to Guilford, redistribute the kids around. So that would be my recommendation. Because the value of a school, a small school in a town like Guilford, it is invaluable. Whereas in Brattleboro, you've got a vibrant community with a lot going on, and you could probably fill that empty building with another educational use.
And I think the current articles point in that direction, lead to that
Yeah.
conclusion, as written.
Although that may have been the hardest vote of the last year and a half for me, because I was going to vote a different way at the start of that conversation. Okay, we're going to take 2 comments and then we're going to move on.
Just a question, is there a provision for a town to vote on closing its school? So, okay.
I mean,
There's a provision that the town's input must be sought by the unified board.
Because Guilford voted to close its middle school. I mean, it was a very painful vote.
Yes.
But people took that vote. And you know, people in these towns are smart, you know, but they deserve the voice, I think,
So
in
we've
whether
had-
or not to close their school, and not to give them that, you know, to leave it just to the super board, I think is a big mistake.
So do know that we have had that conversation for hours and hours.
sure,
And we
I'm
have
sure.
struggled, and we have seen all sides of it, and we can all relate to all sides of that conversation. So I would say all of us appreciate the depth of consideration you have for that.
But do know that it's in there. It's definitely in there that you have to, the unified
called the
board
unified
cannot
board.
just make that vote. Is he hearing me? I don't know.
No, she's talking to.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name, sir. What is your name?
Oh, Rick.
Rick. So do know that that is part of the Articles of Agreement, if you look at it, that it requires the unified board to do a full year of study. It requires to get town input. I don't remember if it still requires, but we talked about having 2 meetings held in that town. And I think it probably, does it still say that it has to be 4
Yeah,
informational meetings?
it's
Do you
at
have it?
least 4 public hearings, at least 2 of the public hearings shall be held in the community in which the school is located. Then there's a later paragraph about after consulting with community stakeholders, and I think we identified those people as like select board, parents, community members, a thorough review with their input.
And we've also outlined what some of the things that have to be taken into consideration, you know, commute time and busing time for little kids and varieties of opportunities. Does a school have a huge amount of space that's being utilized, like the Putney Forest or the Guilford School outdoor spaces and such? So it's not just a decision that's made by the unified board because somebody throws it up in a motion and then 2 minutes later it's discussed and thrown out in the school.
No, I understand that, but those are barriers, they're not really safeguards to voters. You know, that because the decision is still the board's to make, it's not the town's to make. And I think you're doing yourselves a disservice by not putting it to a town vote. That's, you know, and that you may find that you know, that it doesn't pass for that reason.
We acknowledge that. Eric, do you have something to say?
Well, I think Rick just said it, and I'll just sort of repeat, I think what Beth was saying was this, that I think, I understand, Richard, that we've got all this language in there that hopefully prevents us from getting to a point where we would have to make a decision when we have to close a school. And I think the language is subtle, and it's something that all of us that have been in these meetings for a year can understand and appreciate as a possibility. But the reality is there's a lot of people out there that don't understand still what we're doing. And when it comes to voting day, all they're gonna see is that they don't have control over whether their school closes or not. And I'm worried that that's gonna prevent us merging. And I think even though our board all believes that this would be beneficial for our town, I think if we can't get to that point, then I wonder if we need to find some way to compromise. I know we've already made a vote, so
Yeah.
just a comment.
And I would say, I think we all value that. I think we've been compromising for far over a year. I think we've been spending hundreds and hundreds of hours compromising.
Yeah.
If we do not merge or move forward, the state's going to determine that for us. So I would remind us all that it is our job to take this project on and to merge or comply with Act 46 in a way that we feel comfortable with, even if it is hard. Because if we do not make progress, others will make that determination, will make, decide how our schools are run for us. And we might be running into that situation far sooner than we would like if Dummerston does not vote this up. We don't have many options, and I'm one who's very intrigued with the idea of pausing as a study committee and asking the Board of Ed to determine our town's fate. But that's perhaps not a discussion that we need to delve into now, unless we want to spend the next half hour doing so.
Well, they're taking testimony right now on S15 and H15, which is talking about the alternative structures. And who knows where that's going to go, and we've been talking about alternatives for a long time, and your board has refused to really delve into it.
Well, at the very end of the meeting, you're more than welcome to talk about that. I'll just share that we've spent a lot of time talking about alternatives.
No, you haven't.
I know you disagree, Jody. We've heard about your disagreements with this committee for over a year
and a half.
And you can talk at the end of this, okay? All right, everyone, we've got half an hour left. Ideally, we can actually leave early tonight. We've got community outreach and then review process and compliance. I just touched on process and compliance, but is there anything, and we've also throughout this evening, we've been talking about outreach. Is there any other outreach we want to be talking about before we hit the stage?
Does everyone know about the video? Should we update people on the video?
About what?
So, 2 meetings ago, we maybe decided we were going to do a video. And so I had written a script actually back in September, shared that, and Alice and I and Amy were the 3 that were supposed to look at that, so we did. And we have written up the script, and now, Beth, you went in today, right?
I'll be doing that again.
Yep.
What's that?
February 21st.
Because Beth and I misunderstood something.
So, anyway, there's a bunch of us going in and standing in front of the camera, feeling stupid and doing a video. And that will be up to the website soon, and it talks about such things as the question of school closure and answers what's in the actual article. It talks about cost. What did I even talk about today? The way a leadership council would work. I don't know. Yeah. And it's like 10 or 12 different topics, and then people could go to a website and actually hear what the study committees put into the articles on each of those. And hopefully it'll be done within another week, right?
Yeah, less than, Ricky's
I'm
reporting.
going on Friday.
I'm going on Friday, and Amy's going on Friday.
I'll be going probably Friday.
Okay.
Oh, you said the 12th?
Oh, there's a couple of things that need to be revised.
Review process and compliance. Do we need to do that?
Did you say you met yesterday then and talked to the people up at Montpelier? Was there anything?
That was this morning.
Was there anything exciting?
No, it was not. Well, yes, it was very exciting because we were actually talking to them. They invited us to actually share what we're doing, and that has not happened for the last year. Our legislators have not come to us and asked to engage in any way. And we weren't really engaging, we were just sharing. In fact, only one legislator who represents Putney has approached me over the last year and asked to talk about this and been appreciative of our committee and the hard work we've done. So
Actually, I've been hearing regularly from Becca.
that's great. And well, she was the one who approached me and said, wow, this is really hard for you. You're having really hard conversations. But there's been an absence, and that's been unfortunate because these are hard conversations. And while they may have not voted for the law, it is the law. So it would have been great to have more support and guidance. So anything else? No? Is there any motion to? Oh, yes, we're going to open it up to folks. Yeah. Oh, dates for the next meeting? Okay, we're going to talk dates, schedule, and then we will open it up to folks.
So you have an information meeting on the 13th of February. In Dummerston. I'm wondering if you want to have a meeting before that?
What do we need to do?
Or after that?
We have a GCS school board on the 13th.
What did you say, Alex?
On the 13th of February, we have a GCS school board.
Are you inviting us to come?
If you guys bring the food.
No,
Well,
we actually, we are not, because
No.
we've got other stuff we
We've
have
got
to
so
do
much
that.
that we need to take care of.
I would say that we do need to talk to folks about these opportunities to serve, and that might be a time we can do that.
Ron, is there a supervisory union meeting?
That's tentatively scheduled for February 15th.
I'm just trying to.
Want to piggyback on that?
I mean, on the next meeting, yeah.
No.
What day of the week is that?
It's a Wednesday.
You just said that.
Where is that tentatively scheduled at?
I don't know. Probably Brattleboro.
Ron,
What?
Can we do Thursday instead of
it's the
Wednesday?
16th instead of 15th?
The SU. We scheduled this based on the attorney that's going to be with us that night. I think I gave him that date and he wasn't available. I could check with him for some other dates.
And where are we going to?
Wednesdays are just hard, but that's okay, I'll figure it out.
Where were you planning on doing that?
Probably Brattleboro.
Cusick Room or?
What's
6
that?
o'clock?
Cusick Room or where?
Yeah, probably. So again, that's an SU meeting as opposed to a study committee meeting.
Is there any day that week we can have a study committee meeting?
Well, we already are the one that week, right, the
On the
13th?
13th.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Did you want one before that?
Well,
And if Guilford can't be there, it's basically an informational meeting, so.
Right.
For Dummerston.
But it's more of a show of support, we're not gonna really make any decisions on it.
Right.
The Dummerston meeting was at 6? Yeah.
I guess the question is, do you feel like you need a meeting the week before or do it after?
I'm wondering whether we need any meetings until after the vote.
Yeah, so maybe the week of the 28th?
that's getting really tight to letting people know what's going on. Well, I guess we don't need to worry about
Yeah,
that if they're
I think we can generate the information for the petitions and get those out. We can share them electronically.
Okay.
I think that goes.
I mean, I'm not saying there wouldn't be any action. There's a list of things that we need to follow up on.
So that information on the vote, on the ballot or petitions to get on the ballot, that would go out to the board chairs, and then it's at each of the board levels, it has to be
Right.
talked about in the school level,
Right.
community levels. So this committee probably doesn't need to meet until after the vote. Right? We'll know the vote results by the 22nd when we wake up.
Yep.
Unless we stay up for it, Joe.
Oh, let's have a.
And I would suggest that you don't meet that week. There'll be people away. So I'd be looking at like the 28th. Which is
No,
a
the
Tuesday.
13th we can go.
With no board meetings.
Yeah, Dummerston's has a board meeting that night. That's our info budget info meeting.
So that would be like 6:30.
Anytime on Tuesday, 28th, is that what you said? Yes?
Dummerston has a budget meeting that night.
What does that mean?
It'd be hard to have a study committee meeting aligned with that.
Another suggested day?
We have a meeting on the 1st.
March 2nd? Oh, the 1st?
Well, the
You
2nd.
have a forum that night though, don't you?
Sorry, guys, this is deadly boring.
So if the Brattleboro town, would it be reasonable to think you're gonna meet from 5 to 6:15?
Okay.
Wednesday, well, no.
We just need to plan the
The
representative
town,
stuff,
the
so.
town rep meeting is on the
So I don't
15th.
think I don't think we'll have a lot to plan.
Okay. So tentatively, study committee on the 1st at 6 o'clock?
Second. You like Wednesdays, but.
Oh, yeah, how about the 2nd? Study committee, March 2nd, 6 o'clock. Be there.
Where?
Don't know. We'll tell you.
Okay. Are we comfortable that we don't need to share information with folks before then?
Mark.
I'm the only one who's concerned about that?
What?
Presenting more information to people before before town meeting. If I'm alone, then we can,
You're concerned about sharing information with townspeople about the vote that will be happening.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, for me, I guess I want to know what happens in Dummerston, and then we decide exactly how we're going forward, and then we know what we can share.
We'll end up probably changing dates.
Because depending on what happens in Dummerston, we might be presenting different things.
Yeah, it's very,
Right?
yeah. Erin, you good? Okay. All right.
So the only thing that we actually wrote down was one study committee meeting on Wednesday, March, now it's Thursday,
March 2nd.
March 2nd.
March 2nd.
But we don't know where.
Location to be decided.
Yes.
Right. Okay. This is the time for public comments. So I'm going to take from here over. Go ahead.
Hi. A short comment and then a question. So I was reading about some stuff up in Harwood where they're working on this, and I know we talked tonight about school closings, but there was an issue up there where the unified board was reducing staffing at one of the schools. So I just wanted to make the comment that there could be issues about how small schools figure with the unified board, short of closings, because that's already become an issue in Harwood, where the people in one of the smaller schools in that new unified district is saying that the unified board, by reducing staff, is making their school less attractive in the new choice. That was one of the reasons why, one of the ways they sold the unified district is that people could choose among the schools in the unified district. And a decision has been made or is being made to reduce staff, and people in that town are feeling like, you know, you're pushing us back on our heels and making our school less desirable. So I just made that comment. You don't have to respond to it. But the unified board could have issues with small schools short of closing them. There could be other decisions made that could come up, because that is happening in other parts of Vermont. The question I had is I was looking under the choice, school choice within the district for our own proposed merger here. And the phrase socioeconomic came up as one of the topics that could restrict, would be taken into consideration in people moving around within the district. Is that wording is in there. It's a list of one of the things that would affect intra-district choice. Okay, it's in here. It's in the current merger. And on the issue of equity, is how deep have you all discussed the issue of socioeconomic? Because we have some pretty different statistics even within these 4 or 5 towns.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the most established relationships between success in school I used to teach at Canal Street School. I was very involved publicly when that school was closed, and it was largely closed. One of the biggest issues in the closure was the socioeconomic imbalance, that school had risen up to like 80% free and reduced lunch and other. So what I'm saying is that would the new unified board, how much have you talked about how that unified board could work as a whole area to confront the issue of different levels of socioeconomic makeup within our schools? Is that like a rail you don't want to touch? Have you talked about it? Because that could be a way that you could sell Act 46 in this area, that you're going to actually tackle that. In Brattleboro, it took the closing of a school to tackle that. And I think it was largely No Child Left Behind, because in those days when that school was closed, I don't think Canalo Grove could have ever succeeded under the new laws coming in. And the result was to close the school, and our schools are more balanced today, but they're still not balanced in Brattleboro. And my question is, you don't even have to discuss it. Has that discussion happened in the study group about the role of a unified board in tackling some of the different socioeconomic differences within our district? That's the simple question, just whether that discussion has happened.
Well,
Thank you.
I guess I'd say, I don't think it's happened at the study committee level. It's happened at board levels. And Brattleboro in particular has been very conscious of the percentages in the different schools. And quite frankly, it's been the principals and the board support to go back to a more neighborhood school. And actually, as a result of that, the socioeconomics have evened off more in the schools. So that's been a conscious decision to do that.
I'd add to that a bit.
Yep.
Andy, I think what you're suggesting may be a little bit further, because our task is not to come up with exactly what the new unified board will do. However, as part of our research and our comparisons and our looking at the differences, we're very much aware of the socioeconomic differences in the towns and have had that front and center on our
At this second.
Yes.
in this setting, and front and center on our plates as we've looked at it. And very much are aware of the needs in some of the schools right now to hire some of the positions, to put in place the programming that we've been talking about that is not able to come into play at some of these schools that need it, such as Guilford and Putney, that have those same issues that Brattleboro has, but they cannot afford, for various reasons, to put in what Brattleboro has, with the larger population, been able to do to much acclaim. And that is one of the reasons that we really have talked about a positive out of this merger, to be able to put those in. So I think what you're alluding to is that we should be somehow taking children and socioeconomic redistributing children. That would be something that the new unified board would look at. My sense from what we've all talked about is that we're not looking to start taking children and busing them all over the place. And just in an attempt to balance socioeconomic differences. However, being able to address the needs, yes, absolutely, that has been on our table.
And just some of the program opportunities that we've talked about. Universal meals. Brattleboro is able to do it because of their socioeconomics, free breakfast and free lunches. Guilford, Dummerston, Putney don't qualify, but in a unified system they would. And so it's not so much about socioeconomic as it is having those sorts of benefits, those programming benefits that all kids would share in, because they can't raise $30,000 in their budget because it goes over the state cap. But in a unified district, those federal programs would be throughout the district. So free breakfast and free lunches in all of the district schools. You know, those are things that we've studied quite a bit. And, you know, in terms of this school choice article, we specifically left it that the school director should develop the policy. There are some policies out there, and one thing it talks about is limiting the numbers when necessary. And some school districts have like a 3% or a 5% in or out transfer, because they don't want a school, a small school, to be like everybody leaves that school. And that's the point about the staffing, the programming, the administration with the principal and the leadership councils, maintaining a viable school with the support of the unified board. And we don't want school choice to drain off students, so we say, oh, now we can close that school. I think we've been very conscious about that.
Thanks, Ron. Anyone else? Paul?
Paul Amador, Dummerston. Having read the paper today, I'm glad to see Jill's taking skiing lessons and she's all in one piece.
Still, a chance.
My comment is primarily to question, you're coming to the February 12th meeting or 13th meeting to be an ally for Vernon, and I question the propriety of the study committee doing that. I can understand why Vernon wants to be there; they should be there. It's Dummerston's forum, and it's Dummerston's vote that's going to take place, and I don't think the study committee has any business being there.
I'll write that down. I'm not welcome. I will take it off my list of things to do.
You're welcome as an individual, Joe, but I don't think the committee needs to be there. Well, the committee is made up of individuals. Thank you very much, Mark.
Yes. And
were you going to talk about the articles that are going to be on the town warnings by petition in Putney, Dummerston, and Guilford? Are they on there? Do you have the language that they?
We could. We're running out of time to do that.
I thought I heard it said that was coming up as part of your agenda, and I didn't hear it.
Yeah, we can take the time to quickly
So
review it.
the petitions in Guilford and Putney call for Acts 46 Study Committee a full and thorough examination of the feasibility of alternatives to any plan involving Guilford Town, this is specific to Guilford, merging with other towns. And then a brief report outlining the pros and cons of a merger and alternatives to a merger to be presented to the voters at least 1 month before voters are asked to vote upon any proposed governance change. So the towns are required to do an information meeting within 10 days of the vote anyway. So I would suspect that, I know the committee has done the work on the alternatives. We're going to pull out those charts again to show you all the different options that we looked at and why they weren't feasible. And then I would hope that each board would do an update at their town meetings about the mergers. And then by statute, you need to have a public information meeting in each town 10 days prior to that vote, whenever that is.
So what's going to happen at town meeting is that our school board, in my case Guilford School Board, is going to address the pros and cons of a merger. When that article comes up, or was that going to happen at a different place?
No, it's Article 7 in your town meeting.
It was gonna happen anyway.
Yeah.
Right. That's what
we were gonna give a presentation on Act 46 at town meeting before those articles or petitions were even brought forward. So it's kind of redundant from what we were gonna do anyway. We'll have a presentation specifically about the alternatives as well, just to demonstrate that. But yeah, it's really nothing more than what we were going to do. We'll include a little more on the alternatives, but.
I was just wondering what the language of the article that you had already drafted was, because I just don't know what it's going to look like on the town.
We were planning to do our presentation under the other business article. Now there's one specifically for it, so we'll do it then.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, one last comment, Jody, and then anyone else?
Well, I think those petitions are for more than the study committee. They're for the community to have
It's
a.
different in Dummerston.
Yeah.
Excuse
It's
me,
different.
I think it's different.
It is, and it's in Dummerston, is for the community to be able to have a discussion, because the community has not spoken. Last year at town meeting, a bunch of us tried to talk about Act 46, and we were told that there was not enough time to talk about Act 46. And there's no better place than town meeting to talk about it. You're gonna have most of your people there, so it will not, in Dummerston anyway, be just a study committee talk.
Thank you, Jody. Anything else? All right, thank you, everyone, for coming out for what, the 40th time now, or something like that?
I move
Is
to
there a
adjourn.
motion?
A second motion?
Sorry, who's the second?
Alan?
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?